Hey y'all, I greatly appreciate your views, your likes, your comments. They just mean the world to me, and I just wanted to take a minute here and say thank you. Hey y'all, and welcome back to Tobacco Leaf Legacies. I'm Cheryl. This video is very special and very unique, and probably the only one that I'm going to do like this. I wish I could do more. And it all started with this. Just a folder. This was a history project that I did in 11th grade. And what this entailed was that we had to find somebody that was older. Now, a lot of people probably chose their grandparents, and of course I didn't have that option. So I chose my neighbor. My neighbor's name was Doris McShane. She was the sweetest, kindest lady, and I grew up with her. She babysat for me a couple times, which I didn't have a lot of babysitters. I did not grow up with babysitters. So I remember sitting with her a couple times at the house, and she was reading to me and that kind of stuff. And she loved animals, and she was a teacher. I mean, she really was just this wonderful person. And so I thought, well, let me ask her if she'll go along with this. And she did. And so what we did was we sat down and I asked her some questions. Let's see. I'll do like better video of this just so that you can see. I asked her questions, and whatever we were studying in history at the time, I think I tried to focus on that. And I'll be very honest. If I could go back and do this again, y'all, oh my gosh, I would ask so many different questions. I mean, I can't even tell you. But I mean, of course, you know, I'm almost 50 now, and that was 11th grade. So, you know, difference. But it was what it was. I'm just glad to have it. Okay, I'm just grateful to have it. Okay. And don't laugh, y'all. That's right. I took my tape player over and I recorded it on a tape, and I still have it. So when I ran across this the other day, and I was just like, oh, that's right. And then I thought, oh, I can make a video with this. This would be really cool. Okay, well, let me do that. So what I did was I actually took what I'm recording on now and played this on my little stereo, recorded it, got the audio, and kind of fine-tuned it a little bit. Because, I mean, it was just a tape player with a little external microphone. You know, it wasn't something like, you know, what we wear now when we do videos and stuff. So it was a little hard to hear her, and she was very soft-spoken. Anyway, very soft-spoken. So I think the audio is pretty good. And now, my questions, I was not a good interviewer at the time, so y'all don't judge me on that, okay? I was in 11th grade. I had other stuff going on. I was trying my best. So y'all don't judge me on that. But what's most important is her and her answers and how she was talking about that time period and how she lived. Now, the next part of this is, well, because I have audio, what am I going to do for a visual, right? So I tried to contact her family. Now, Miss McShane never married. She did not have children, so I couldn't go there. She did have a sister, but the sister has passed already. So she would have been the source to go to, and she's gone. So I tried to contact Miss McShane's sister. Did have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and the girl had 2 kids, which of course they're grown now. So I did some, you know, Google searching and found them and sent letters. Out of like 3 or 4 letters, I think I only got 1 back. Well, unfortunately, nobody contacted me. Since I couldn't get that, I'm like, okay, what else can I do? Well, Miss McShane was a teacher. So I thought, okay, I have a little, let's see, what do you call it? You go to the funeral and you get the little thing. I don't know what it's called. Excuse me. Anyway, I have that. It had a little bio on it of her, and it listed where she taught. And she was also very involved in a particular church. She'd been going there like over 20 years. So I thought, all right, let's start there. And so that's what I did next. I went through contacted three or four schools, and the church. So I had to contact and call and email and on and on and on. But I did get some pictures that I'm very grateful to have gotten those. Oddly enough, my parents didn't take one picture of that woman. We have no pictures of her. So many pictures of other people, but for whatever reason, we just never got a picture with her, I'm sad to say. But I also contacted, she went to Wheaton College, and somehow in doing a search, I ran across a link of I'm assuming maybe when she passed, maybe this was in a will, maybe she gave it to him before she passed, I'm not really sure. But she put together this little scrapbook from her time when she was at Wheaton College. So she was, late teens, early 20s. And it is just, and you'll see it, as the interview goes on, because that's part of the images I can share with you. But you'll see those, and oh, those are just precious. Those are an absolute treasure trove of history, and just preserved in these pages of this little book, and they're just so precious. So I wish there was somebody in her family that I could share this with, because it's taken a lot of effort, but I'm actually getting a little emotional. Oh, shocker. She was a sweet lady, and she was a very special person. And I love doing things like this, especially to honor her. And it does kind of make me sad that there's nobody to share this with, but I'm sharing it with you because all of you, appreciate family history, appreciate history in general, and I thought that you would appreciate hearing from her. Hold up, stop the video. So a really cool thing happened after I did the intro that y'all were just watching. I went back on Google and I was trying to do a bit more searching, and I was actually trying to look up this sister that I had known. And Google and algorithms and all these things are kind of funny. Well, a different link popped up, and it popped up for Ancestry.com. Now, I'm not currently paying for Ancestry.com, so that wasn't really something that I was looking at to try to find information. But as I was kind of looking at this link, I thought, you know what, there's something here. I went ahead and I did the free trial, which I made sure to, cancel like a couple weeks later. But the really cool thing is that Miss McShane had another sister that I never met. And of course, that sister had children. And so I was able to contact one of her other nieces, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, thank you so much for responding to me, for sending me pictures and everything. And it's just made all the difference in the world. And I am just so thankful for that. And what's exciting about this is not only was I able to get, more pictures to be able to put in this video to show you, but contacting her gave me a family member to be able to share this video with. And y'all, that just does my heart good, because it really, you saw, it was really making me sad that there wasn't anybody to share it with. And so now there is, and I'm so excited. So, okay, back to the video. Doris Lorraine McShane was born in Merriam, Kansas on January 22, 1907 to Lewis and Lorena McShane. Lewis was a manager at Dodd, Mead and Company, and Lorena had taught school for 10 years before marriage, so she continued to run a one-room school in her neighborhood since public school was too far for the children to walk. Doris had an older sister, Lois, born in 1904, and a younger sister, Marjorie, born in 1914. Doris left Kansas with her family in 1920 and moved to Wheaton, Illinois. She graduated from Wheaton College in the late 20s with a BA in literature. In the 30s, the family moved to Springfield, Massachusetts. While living there, Doris was employed as a journalist for the social section of the Springfield Union. She was very involved in church, teaching Sunday school, vacation Bible school, and participating in the music for 2 weekly radio programs. During World War II, she taught in St. Petersburg, Florida, and also briefly in Costa Rica. Doris became engaged to Jack Robson of Philadelphia in 1950. Their wedding date was set for March of 1951, but Jack died suddenly due to a heart attack. This loss in Doris's life was extremely difficult, but she trusted God for strength to rearrange her future. It was at this time that she returned to St. Petersburg and established a new home there. Doris taught English at 3 different schools before retiring in the early 70s. She was an active member of her church for nearly 30 years. She had a vital interest in missions and loved to attend the Sunday prayer meeting for the missionaries. While Doris never married or had children, she was very involved in the lives of her 2 nieces and 2 nephews. She loved animals and always had a fur child of her own. And now let's jump back in time and hear from Doris herself.
It's May 7th, 1991, and this is Cheryl Lewis. I'm with Doris McShane, my next-door neighbor, and we're in her living room. I'm interviewing her mainly because of a history assignment, but also because I knew that she could share a lot of her interesting memories with me. And now she'll tell you a little bit about herself.
Well, I was born in Kansas, in eastern Kansas, when it was Johnson County, which is now as one of the affluent counties of Kansas, but it was just trees and woods and hills and just country then. And I was born in 1907, in January, winter of 1907, and spent my first 13 years in Kansas, in eastern Kansas, and loved it. Spent my all waking hours that I could riding a pony and climbing trees and being an outdoor person. And we moved to Illinois, where I eventually went to college, and then later I moved to Massachusetts, and I was involved there in newspaper work for a while before I left to come to Florida, where I have taught. I did teach 1 year in Pennsylvania prior to that. But after I came to Florida, then I taught here until retirement time, and I've been here now almost 39 years.
How old were you when the Great Depression hit?
I must have been about 19 then.
Where were you living?
We were living in Wheaton, Illinois, where we went to school. And we were aware of the Depression, but our own family was not affected too much because Daddy's had a job, and the bank where he had his money did not collapse. There were 2 banks in the little city, little town in which I lived, and the banks were closed on the weekend, and many people lost their money. But the bank in which Dad had his money opened on Monday, and we were very glad for that. But the one that was closed, the bank president committed suicide later. It was a very sad time for many, many people.
Did many workers or colleagues of yours lose their jobs?
Well, you see, I was involved really in school, so that we did have some friends who the Depression hit, but I don't remember too many, but I know that many, many people were out of work. In the big cities, there were lines of soup lines of people that had been good jobs. They were even doctors and lawyers, and many people who just lost everything. And so it was a sad time.
From your viewpoint, did the public really believe in FDR and feel they could put all their faith in him?
I think that the majority did, because they had been through so much. They just kind of reached out and grabbed onto what seemed to be going to help them.
How are the schools affected?
Well, I know that we had a very dear friend in college who had to, whose father died, and so they were. He no longer could go on to college. So there were students whose families lost their money and they had to leave school to go to work.
Did they ever like come back and graduate, or after it was over?
Some of them did, and this one I'm speaking of did not. He went on to into business in the business world.
Did the public seem to accept FDR's New Deal with open arms?
Well, I think so, and it was anything that could help, you see.
Out of his relief programs, which one do you remember the most?
Well, there were many jokes about the WPA and the men that were hired just to work in the city, sweep the streets, and then they'd sweep the dirt back off again. Of course, that was a joke. I don't think we really did that. They probably were doing something, but we had to have some fun about it because it was makeshift. You know, they had to have jobs, and I'm glad that they did have jobs because many people needed it very much. And of course, many of them with the CCC built parks and built highways and all that, which was very fine.
How did the Depression change your attitude toward an outlook on life?
I don't know that it changed my outlook too much because we were never brought up to think that we had to have a lot of money. We had added things that were adequate and plenty of food on the table and nice clothes to wear and to school and to college. But we were never extravagant. And I think that in a way it did affect me because I remember my mother saying, "Now don't throw that away. You may need it sometime." And I guess that's what I've become a pack rat. I put things away and to get rid of them.
Yeah, surprised my mom didn't go through that. She's like that. About when did you finally feel that the Depression was really over?
Well, really not until close to the time that the war started. We gradually pulled out of it, let's say that.
Was it a slow process?
Mm-hmm. Very slow process.
Did World War II affect you or your family or workplace at all?
Well, not in the workplace, but it affected us because of our friends, college friends that went to the war, some of whom never came back. And of course travel was curtailed. I came to Florida that time, and we were not supposed to be traveling by train. We had the dog with us, my sister and I, but we got on the train anyway, and it was packed with soldiers. There wasn't much room for anybody. Most of the night we spent walking around the cars. In fact, the car that we were on, the sleeping car that we were on, it was a golden, what was it called? Well, it was a famous car that used to come out of here. And silver medium, that's what it was. And the car that we were on jumped the tracks just as we left St. Petersburg, and they had to take it off and put an old junkie car on. So we had no really place to stay. And they took the dog and put him in the baggage car, and we spent the night walking back and forth to the baggage car to see that he was all right, sitting on the coffins up there. And we didn't get any sleep at all. We finally got to New York. But we were punished for traveling when we were not supposed to be.
Oh my gosh. Can you think of a particular time when you were scared of or worried about an incident that could have happened relating to the war?
Yes, we didn't like the blackouts because we never knew what was going to happen. And I was in Massachusetts and also here in Florida. And I remember here in Florida, we were in an apartment, my sister and I were in an apartment, and she had gone somewhere to some kind of a meeting, and the blackouts came, and I didn't know how she could even get home because you were not supposed to be out on the street. And if you look out the windows, there were no lights at all. But it was a necessary thing, but it was rather scary. And the same thing was true when I was in Massachusetts because we were in a city where they made all sorts of the ammunition and different things for the war. And so we could have been bombed if they had come over, but of course America was not bombed.
What was the U.S.'s reactions and feelings to the bombing at Pearl Harbor?
Horror. It just devastated the whole country. Because we lost so many men, we lost so many ships, and of course it threw us right into the war.
What was the overall U.S. feeling toward Hitler and Mussolini's rise to power?
We couldn't stand him. They were horrible. Hitler was worse than Mussolini, if that's possible. But Mussolini was a scoundrel too. They were very evil men.
Yeah. What was it like when news of Hitler and Mussolini's deaths were announced?
Well, people were glad to get rid of them. I mean, after all, Hitler had been so awful that, and killed so many people and put people in concentration camps and all that. You couldn't but help but rejoice when he was no longer in existence.
There's not many people that go to church now, or not maybe as many as there was. When the war started and stuff like that, was there a change in that?
Well, yes, I think that people, like in this last war, was in the Desert Storm, people turn to God when trouble comes.
Who do you think was the better president out of Hoover and Roosevelt?
Well, of course, we always felt that Hoover had a very raw deal. He had a plan that if we stuck to it, I think we would come out of it as well as with Roosevelt. But Roosevelt came in and he did a great deal, of course, to put the country back on its feet. So whether you liked him or not, you had to realize that he did a great deal for the country.
Well, what did he have in mind as compared to what Roosevelt did?
Well, I don't remember exactly what Hoover's plan was, but I remember my father saying if we had kept him on, he would have been able to do the same thing. His was a different plan, but frankly I don't remember what it was. But he'd been a very good president. But Roosevelt came in with a New Deal, and everybody wanted a New Deal.
Everybody got scared and wanted something done.
Yes.
Did you ever hear of people that had to shine shoes for a living?
Well, I didn't know of anybody, but I know that people took all kinds of jobs, anything to make a living. I know that is true. See, we didn't live in a big city. You would run into much more of that in a big city. We lived in a country town, college town, and it was a different type of life. We didn't know anybody was shining shoes for a living there, but I know in the city they did everything. As I say, they had red lines. People important people who had money would just lost everything.
What about the lady that had all the cans in her basement or whatever?
Oh yes, she of course we were rationed on canned goods, coffee, butter, gasoline of course, and shoes. I forgot what else we had ration books and so when she knew that we were going to be rationed on canned goods, she went out and bought everything she could buy, packed it in the basement and had a flood, and all the labels on the cans washed off. So she was stuck with a whole basement full of canned goods that she couldn't identify. When she opened up, she just had to guess what she was opening up. And that got in the paper, of course, the whole country laughed themselves up sick over that. We thought it was so funny because we were so disgusted. We were not supposed to go out and buy a lot just before rationing came in, you see. And but she had done that, and she got punished for it.
How did they issue the books?
Well, everybody got them according to how many were in the family, and I don't remember now exactly, but we had coupons, and they lasted a certain length of time. You had so many coupons for butter or coffee or whatever it was for a certain length of time, and then you could get another one. You could go to the government office and get another one.
And so that they had a government office or whatever stationed everywhere, so they could go get them.
Some kind of a county or government city place where they handle that in every town.
What about when you were working over at the when the guys came back, recreation and stuff for them? the trolley cars and all that?
Oh, you mean during the war, during the reparations, the USO?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
that was, we were in Florida then, and we used to go out and go down in the center and serve refreshments, and they had entertainment for the fellows there. And here in Florida, they had, here in St. Petersburg, they had a camp out at the, I think it was an induction camp, out at what used to be called the jungle. I think it's still called the jungle, but it's of course not a jungle now. And so that the trolley that came in from there, that was the only way of transportation down Central Avenue, would be just loaded with servicemen. And the fellow, the conductor looked just like a monkey, and we thought it was appropriate that he was going to the jungle. But you know, you have to have a lot of fun, even with all the seriousness of war. You have to have a lot of fun because you can't stand it if you don't. And the boys that were here were that way too. The whole town was full of servicemen, and as I said, we'd meet them at the USO, and we'd go down shopping on Saturdays, and they would pile the trolleys full, and they wouldn't let us get on. We sometimes have to wait 3 and 4 trolleys before we could get back to our apartment. And finally, some kind soldiers would say, "Come on," and they'd pull us onto the trolley. But you just took all that in your stride because it was wartime. You just took it in your stride.
During the Depression, the meals that you had, did they change, or did you like eat the same way you had?
Well, we were never extravagant. Mother was never extravagant in buying anyway. We had good solid food, and I don't know that we were curtailed too much because we were not extravagant anyhow. That was we were brought up, and that was the way they were brought up. Mother and Dad they were pioneers in Kansas, and they knew what it was to go without, so they were not extravagant, but we had what we needed, and that was it.
How do you think that the World War II got started? Or what was the first shot, I guess you could say?
It started, of course, all the way over in Europe, in which we were not involved. It was, I can't remember, it was well, Hitler, of course, took over Poland, but they took over, I guess, Czechoslovakia, if I remember correctly, first. And then moved on to Poland, and of course they were just wiped out as soon as Hitler went in, and it wasn't any time at all till he had most of the central part of Europe, and then he eventually was on to France, but France held out for a long time, and of course England had a rough time too at first. And then, of course, we got into the war, and they were great in the war. England was. And when they had to take the men off the beaches at Dunkirk, they determined to go. Churchill determined to go back into the war and win, and of course they did. And it was great victory when VE Day came. That was victory in Europe. Of course, we were fighting in the Pacific then, too. So that time we were heavily into it.
What exactly is D-Day?
Well, it's when the whole thing was over, you see. When the war was over, was D-Day. And VE Day was Victory Day in Europe. And VJ Day was Victory in Japan. That, of course, came much later.
Do you remember, did they have any atomic bombs or nuclear bombs or any
Well,
of those
that's
things?
when they bombed. That's really what ended the war, you see, was the bombing in Japan, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. That was the first atomic bomb.
How did people react over here to
Well, of course, it ended the war, which was blessed to everybody. And I don't think any of us realized the devastation that took place, and aftermath of atomic bombs at the time. We were just so grateful that the war was over.
Truman was president at the time, right?
Yes.
Remember Truman being president? What did you think of him?
Well,
He started out as vice president, right?
yes, he was
Then
vice
went-
president. He went in. You see, he came from Kansas City, and I reflect my father's attitude on him because, see, we were Kansas City people, and he belonged to the Pendergast gang there, which was not the greatest in my father's estimation. So therefore, we never thought too much of Truman. You know, you reflect what your parents
Right.
said. Well, of course, they had lived longer than we had, and knew more about things than we did.
All right, y'all. I really hope that you enjoyed that interview. Maybe you got a few laughs out of listening to me and, you know, my silly questions. Like I said, if I could sit down with her today, oh my goodness, the questions that I would ask her actually more about her childhood and her parents and those kind of memories. But like I said, I am grateful to have what I have. I hope you enjoyed that. That's what happens when you're going through stuff and you run across a folder of an old project. You turn it into a video and you share it. Thanks so much for watching, guys. As always, time is precious. Carpe diem. Seize the day. I'll see you next time.